How's everybody doing today? So, I'm live on Instagram and YouTube. Live on YouTube for the first time. Live on Instagram. Waiting for some people to jump on here. And just before people come on, and for those that are watching later, my name's Brian Wisda. I created ADHD Lullaby. And today I was just going to kind of talk a little bit about the story behind how ADHD Lullaby came to be. For those of you who've been following this ADHD Lullaby and my story for a little bit now, I kind of have a unique background. In 2015, I sold a business. I was a financial planner for a lot of years. Sold a business to follow and become a deputy sheriff, which was my total dream job. And about a year and a half later, in May of 2016, I was working a DUI enforcement detail on Cinco de Mayo weekend when I got shot while conducting a traffic stop. And that kind of laid me up for a few months, as you can imagine. And while laid up in bed, my wife came to me and said, "Hey, you're not going to just watch movies and play video games." She said, "Hey, it's really sexy if you want to play the guitar." I'm like, "Oh, okay, we'll check it out." And so anyway, I started playing the guitar. And all along, while learning how to play the guitar, my oldest son, Kale, has ADHD. We'd have to go into his room every night and make sure he didn't get out of bed, because like most kids with ADHD who take a stimulant medication, he was never tired at night. He was getting that late in the day energy burst from a homeostasis imbalance. And it keeps him from being able to fall asleep at night. So we'd lay in his room and we'd have to stay in there and make sure he'd go to sleep. Well, this could take 2 or 3 hours sometimes. So, just kind of past time, I would sometimes take my guitar in and just play music for him, whatever the case may be. Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, Brahms Lullaby, typical children's music. And it didn't really work. I mean, he's like, "Yeah, whatever, Dad." And, that's not cool. So one day I'm like, to heck with the lullabies. I just started practicing scales. So, and I would play just basic scale things. I mean, back then it was simple stuff like, and then just run through a scale. Right? Scales, which anybody who's had kids that play instruments, listening to anybody play scales is the most absolutely god-awful thing in the world, especially when they're first learning to play. And I was no exception to the rule. So instead of just playing straight scales, I would have to kind of randomize those scales. So instead of playing something like, right, I would do something more like this. Right? Still playing the scale, but just playing random notes on that scale. And what that did is it helped my son fall asleep. It was amazing. He came to me the next night. He's like, "Dad, I really kind of like that." And I couldn't figure out why for the longest time, but I kept doing it for him, and he liked it. And I asked a friend of mine who's a psychologist, I'm like, "Why is it that my son, who has ADHD, falls asleep faster to these random notes versus me playing a traditional song, like something like Mozart or Brahms or whatever the case may be?" And my friend said to me, he goes, "Well, the human mind in Western music is so accustomed to hearing patterns that if you play a song with a pattern, they're going to identify the pattern and dismiss it. Whereas if you play something that doesn't have a pattern to it, the mind can't identify the pattern and therefore can't just dismiss it. And it was an interesting phenomenon. It really made some sense. In warfare, there's a term known as the OODA loop, which a guy in the Air Force made famous back during Vietnam. And it basically summarizes how the brain takes information and processes it. Well, if you can confuse that OODA loop, you can keep the brain from kind of orienting itself and making a decision. So what I did was I said, well, wait a second. What if I take these random notes and I put them over the top of rhythmic notes? So playing a basic thing, I might come in here and just go like this. Right in time, just dead on time. And then come along and take these random notes and play over the top of it. So we'd have something like this, right? And then over the top of it, I would play something that sounded like this. Totally out of time on purpose. And what I found was my son went to sleep a little bit quicker. And that kind of got the ball rolling. And I started doing more research and involving my friend who's a psychologist and asking him and saying, hey, will this work? Will this work? Will that work? Will that work? Trying stuff out on my kid, sending recordings of really rudimentary recordings that I did to other parents that had ADHD kids and saying, hey, tell me if this works with your kid. And that's kind of how this album progressed. And it's a pretty amazing thing. Fast forward to February 15th when this released. This album has now been streamed thousands of times. We've sold a ton of copies of the CD. We're selling tons of copies of the digital download. And in 3 weeks-ish, give or take, maybe 4 now, I've had about 100 parents write me and tell me some of the most amazing things that you can absolutely hear. They would say things like, I'd spend 3 hours trying to get my kid to sleep, and now he's asleep in 15 minutes. And that's the coolest thing to hear because I've been there and I get it. I know what it's like to spend every night of your life trying to get your kid to sleep and fighting this struggle, trying melatonin and trying essential oils and trying a weighted blanket and this thing and that thing and this thing and that thing, and none of them work. And when we perfected this, and since perfecting this, and since about October, when the album was really kind of not quite done, but really close to done, my son's been going to sleep every night in 15 minutes. And it's the most amazing thing in the world for my wife and I to be able to not have to sit in his room and hold his hand and make sure he doesn't get up out of bed. And what other parents are telling me is almost exactly the same thing. And it's not just ADHD kids. It's kids with autism. It's kids who have other issues. Adults are telling me, hey, I've had ADHD all my life. I'm 40 years old and I'm falling asleep like a charm. And that's the most amazing thing to hear. In the 100 probably plus reviews I've read and messages that people sent me, I've only had one parent write me back and saying, hey, this is not working for my kid. One. Just one. You look at the numbers. This album has been streamed almost 100,000 times now on iTunes, Spotify, Amazon, and all the streaming services combined, about 100,000 times in three and a half, 4 weeks. And to have only one parent write me and say, hey, this isn't working. And at that parent said, hey, I can't believe this is not working for my kid when it's working for everybody else. She said, my kid is very defiant and oppositional. And she said, I don't think it's the fact that it works or doesn't work. I think that he is so against it because it was my idea and not his, that he's just not having anything to do with it. And obviously, I don't think this album is a magical bullet for everybody, but I certainly am seeing that the vast majority of parents that are using this album with their children are finding phenomenal success with it. So, to that end, if you have a child with ADHD, if you have an autistic child, or if you have a kid that just has insomnia, give it a try, honestly. Go on to iTunes. If you have a streaming subscription with iTunes, you can play it there. You can download it. Spotify, you can stream it there. You can stream it on Amazon, YouTube Music, Google Play, Deezer, Tidal. It's in Russia, it's in China, it's in Africa, it's in Japan, it's in the Middle East, it's in everywhere under the sun. It's in India. I think the second largest number of streams I get is off of a streaming service called Savan, if I'm even saying it right, out of India. This is working, and I'll tell you the thing about the kids working on kids in India that's really amazing is most music in India, and I'm not a fan of Bollywood by any stretch of the imagination, but their music is different. It doesn't follow kind of that Western 4/4 cadence, and I don't fully understand it. I don't fully understand the differences, but the fact that it's working across cultures is phenomenal, because in the United States and Europe, Australia, kind of the Western world, if you will, our music is very, very much about a very consistent rhythm. Not necessarily the case in Eastern music. So the fact that it's working in India and China and on these places where their music is not so rigid as Western music is phenomenal. And like I said, go on to my Instagram page. If you're watching this on YouTube, go on to my Instagram page, go on to my website, and read some of these testimonials. And it's amazing. I never expected the vast number of parents to say, "Hey, works like a charm." Like I half expected maybe 6 out of 10 kids, and it seems more like 99 out of 100, honestly. So it's a phenomenal thing. So anyway, I kind of wanted to share a little bit of the story with you. Apple79 on Instagram just said, "Just bought it today. It's awesome." And awesome it is. And I sincerely hope you find the success with it that everybody else has. In fact, please do write me and tell me. I love hearing that stuff. So this is a cool thing, and it's the neat. Somebody said sing something. I just got paused. Call me. Somebody said sing something. Yeah, Sharma, I have the voice of a spotted donkey. I don't sing. In fact, the music in the album, there is no vocal at all. It is purely instrumental. So I appreciate that, though. If you ask me to sing, I'm bad. Like, windows will break. It's not in a good way. I forget what I was talking about. Anyway, it's the thing about this is not an album where I have Sony Music or Columbia Records or Warner Music or some massive record label in my back pocket who produced this, who's distributing it. All the distribution I've done myself with Amazon and iTunes and Spotify, all that's on my own. And there's nobody out there spending millions on this app. So as parents are hearing about this, hearing about it because parents such as yourselves who have tried it and are finding success with it so far, that is the coolest thing. Because like I said, Sony Music or Columbia Records isn't putting up billboards. They're not advertising in Us Weekly. I'm not John Mayer by any stretch of the imagination, and I don't pretend to be. I don't even consider myself a professional musician as much as I am somebody who figured out how to take a functional use of sound. So I want to thank everybody who's shared this with other parents. It's because of you that other parents are hearing about this. And that's the coolest thing ever. It really is. So thank you for sharing it. Apple 79, the boys and I love it. That's awesome. It really is. I'm so happy. And like I said, I think I was telling you guys about the parent. She wasn't finding much success with it, and my heart was kind of breaking for her because I know what it's like to be in that position where you're struggling every night trying to get your kid to sleep, and your evenings are gone. You're married, you're trying to, or just with someone, trying to spend time with your significant other, only to have, sorry, people keep calling me. I'm sorry, I'll that. Sorry about that. So, you're trying to spend time. I wish people would stop calling me here. And Instagram only works on my phone. Trying to spend time with your significant other, and you're trying to have a relationship. Your time to do that is in the evening, and if that kid's taking 2 hours to get to sleep at night, it doesn't work. That relationship starts to go, and you get mad at one another and grumpy, and it's just not a healthy. Parents out there who are in that same position as I was, who are finding reprieve and respite from this album and its ability to get their kid to sleep faster at night, is by far an unbelievably cool thing. So I can't tell you how much that means to me in and of itself. So if you have the album, if you've listened to it, be it streaming or you purchased a copy and you've had success with it, if you have a chance, if you'd go on to Amazon or iTunes or Spotify or wherever it is you listen to it, leave a review, because that's how other parents are discovering this, is through parents just sharing and telling the story, So that's I'll kind of get off my soapbox. Now, what I do want to mention, and somebody had sent me a message the other day and asked me to do something, and I want to reinforce this. So somebody sends me an email and says, "Hey, can I buy 100 copies of your album and sell them through my kid's PTA?" I'm like, "Sure." And so we worked out a very, very easy deal where basically what I have and will order in those situations is I have these cards. They look like this, right? They're like a download card. You can see it there. And my cost on these is next to nothing. So basically for like a school PTA that wants to do a fundraiser and sell copies of these, I can order these cards in quantities as small as 100. And I'm selling them at cost to these PTAs. So if your kid's school's trying to raise some money for something, or as long as I know I'm sending the cards to the school and not, Bob's, pharmacy or something like that, as long as I know it's going to a PTA, I'm more than happy to do that at basically cost. So you're welcome, Apple. If I'm saying it right, it says Apple 79. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing it right. Anyway, so that's something I want to do. It doesn't matter if your kid goes to the richest school in the world or the poorest school in the world. There's not a PTA alive that can't use a couple extra bucks. And when you're buying an album for basically $1 a copy and turning around and reselling it for 10, that's a decent profit for a PTA. So those cards cost me, they're about $1 a piece to print and work up the download system on and all that. So if you want 300, you get the math. It's about $1 a copy, but that's for a PTA. That's awesome stuff. So yeah. What else did I want to kind of cover today? not a whole lot else that nicks my head off the top of it. I've got to run and pick up my kids here in a minute. Does anybody have any questions? I know there's some people watching on both Instagram and YouTube right now, and if I can answer any questions about the album, I'm pretty much happy to answer anything. I know one person asked me, who was just a kind of a musician. He's like, "Hey, what'd you use to record this?" He goes, "How did you get those frequencies?" So most of the guitar parts were recorded with this, which is my guitar. Everything was recorded in a program called Pro Tools, which is the music industry standard recording software. It's all recorded into a computer. It's, you know, when you look at, like, I don't know, I'm going to say U2 recording something where they have those massive consoles of buttons and stuff. It doesn't look like that anymore. It looks like that on a computer, and it functions in about the same way, but it's quite a bit different. And your abilities on a computer versus a console are, in my opinion, for what I'm doing in terms of bringing the science into music, the capabilities are so much greater. If you're U2 or a big band who's producing a record, you know, there's some warmth to a console that a computer doesn't quite have. So everything goes into a computer. It's all done on Pro Tools. A lot of those frequencies are generated with a frequency generator. And yeah, it's one day I'll see if I can figure out how to do an Instagram Live or a YouTube Live where I actually show how I did it. It's pretty fascinating stuff. And it defies, I think, I've talked to a couple music producers and they're like, "Hey, how'd you do this?" And I'm like, "Well, for starters, I'm not telling you because it's patent pending. I'm not giving away my secrets." But it kind of defies traditional music recording. In fact, that the method in which it was recorded is patent pending. So I have to be kind of careful in what I do and don't say on the advice of my attorney. So yeah, so that's that. The other question I keep getting a lot of is when are you releasing an adult version of the album? My goal is to release an adult version of the album at the end of this year or the first part of 2020. My lead time on producing an album, it takes about 6 to 7 months to produce an album, and it's a lot of work. It's not just, you know, play some notes and cut it. There's so much more to that. For a 3-minute song, you're probably talking about 100 hours of production time for a 3-minute song. So it's pretty intense. And then you've got distribution, lead time, and all that fun stuff that goes with that. So yeah. What else? Let's see, who else on here? Let's take a look at Instagram and see who's following here. Anybody I know and recognize? Aw, Frank's watching. Hi, Frank. Jennifer and Janine. Janine, that's your first name, not Apple. Welcome, pleasure. Jennifer, me and my husband have ADHD and we think our 1-year-old kid may have it too. Do you think your song may work on him? Thank you from Brazil. On a 1-year-old, probably not. And the reason is that the sleeping heart rate of a 1-year-old is so much faster than what you would think it is. So the average sleeping heart rate of a kid who's about 6 to 13 is about 76 beats a minute. And so part of what the album is doing is trying to sync your kid's heart rate with the music, and which will happen over time as anybody listens to music, whether you're at a concert or just listening to headphones. Over time, your heart will sync to the average beats per minute of that music. So if I play an album that's trying to sync a kid down to 76 beats a minute to help them get to sleep, to a 1-year-old, and I want to say the sleeping heart rate of a 1-year-old is about 100 beats a minute. I mean, it's fast. They're like little hummingbirds at that age. It doesn't work. I don't think it'll work so well. In fact, I haven't had anybody write me back and say, "Hey, this works for my 1-year-old." The fact that your 1-year-old has ADHD, it's possible. I don't really know. It's probably too soon to tell. I don't think we had our son tested till he was 4 or 5. But everything I've been reading, everything I see is that it's hereditary and it passes down. My oldest son has it. My youngest doesn't. I don't want to say I had ADHD, but I'm pretty sure I had like ADD. But I was a child of the 80s, and it was so new that nobody really understood it. And everybody's answer was put the kids on Ritalin. And the Ritalin of the 80s was just like zonk you out medicine. The stuff that they're using methylphenidate on a time release today is so much better. I mean, these kids are functioning phenomenally well. They're well adjusted. They're making friends. They're not just sitting in the back corner drooling over themselves like kids were in the 80s. My dad, pretty sure my dad had ADHD. He got in a lot of trouble as a kid. My grandparents actually sent him away to military boarding school because they couldn't handle him. So I think it does go generational. So yeah, you can try it. I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, it's not going to hurt your child by any stretch of the imagination to try it. I just don't think that. I don't think the efficacy is going to be quite what you'd want it to be. So yeah, and she wrote, Apple writes, "Oh great, you do an adult version, awesome." Yeah, I'm working on an adult version right now. We're starting to write some songs and compose those songs. One of the songs for adults, I've got the that's kind of the bass line for one of the adult songs I'm working on. And then over the top of it, it'll sound something kind of like. So you'll kind of get that bass line with that non-rhythmic portion in there, and then the frequencies for adults are a little different, and the rate of the music will obviously be even slower than a kid's. So the sleeping heart rate of an average adult is 60, unless you're just so far overweight that you're not sleeping really very well. So that's the plan for the adult version. Yeah, it'll be fun. Probably around the summer, I'll start a group on Facebook, kind of a trial group, if you will, like a panel that they use with like movies and other music to kind of get feedback as it goes along. That worked really well with the child's version, and I think I'm going to do that again with the adult version. So if you're interested in the adult version, be sure you follow me on Facebook, and I'll start making announcements when I start getting ready to do that, and kind of put a little focus group together, if you will, to help with some feedback on the adult version. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Looking forward to start recording that again. I haven't really, in the last 4 weeks, I haven't played the guitar very much. And I was telling my wife the other night at dinner, I'm like, hey, I'm not really playing. I haven't been playing much lately, and it's kind of bumming me out. So anyway, what else? I don't have a whole lot else going on. But yeah. Oh, one thing I did want to add, and I'm going to probably update the website tonight. Right now, CDs are priced at $17. If you want a physical copy of the CD, they're priced at $17. And I'm gonna add a deal for $3 to add in a digital download, so that you can have it both on physical CD and digital download. And I think where that's really cool is we'll include the digital download, and then you can share that with a friend or however you want, really. So probably gonna update that. Yeah, what was the other thing I did want to cover? Oh, international shipping. A lot of people have been asking about international shipping. Do you ship internationally? Because right now, Amazon's not shipping the album internationally. It's just a logistical issue. But if you want a copy of it and you live overseas, aka not in the United States, you can order it off my website, and I charge $8 for shipping. I'm losing money at that because it costs me about $14 to ship it overseas. That's option one. Option two, if you go into cdbaby.com, you can order copies of the album. I think they also charge about $8 for shipping. It takes a while. And what I mean by that is, so we're shipping U.S. Postal Service first class overseas, so that whatever I ship to you overseas has to first go to a processing center with the Postal Service, and it's usually in Los Angeles before it gets shipped off. And let's say you live in England. This is the weirdest thing. So I'm shipping it to Los Angeles, who's putting it through U.S. Customs and checking to make sure it's okay to export. They then might ship it to Indonesia, right? And then Indonesia is going to carry it to, I don't know, Dubai, and then Dubai to England. So it's not necessarily a direct thing. And I've noticed it takes about 3 to 4 weeks to get a CD overseas. Now, some countries are a little quicker, but I sent one to Libya, and I sent him his copy, I want to say pre-release, first part of February, and he just got his copy of the CD like 2 or 3 days ago, and it took a long time. So if you are international, I highly recommend the digital download if you have the capability. If you don't, I will absolutely get the CD to you. Anyway, I got to get going. I got to go pick up kids. Of course, I'll check your Facebook page. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, anyway, thank you everybody for joining me. It's been a pleasure. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Hope your kids get to sleep quickly tonight, obviously while listening to ADHD Lullaby. And if you have any other questions, as always, I respond very quickly to all messages on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Pinterest, all the social media places. I am seriously trying to develop more of a YouTube presence. So if you're not already following me on YouTube, I would greatly appreciate, head over to YouTube, just type in ADHD Lullaby, and give me a quick subscribe. That would be awesome and huge, and I would greatly appreciate it. And again, thank you for sharing this with other parents. Like I said, there's not a huge record label behind this, so you sharing this with other parents is kind of how kids that really need the help are hearing about this. So anyway, that said, have a great weekend. Take care.